Hi, my name's Jono. I'm from AWS, and thank you for joining us today. So, please join us, our panelists. Sit wherever you like. I'm not being prescriptive about it. So my name's Jono. I'm with the startup team at AWS, and we're delighted to be talking to you today about the future of SaaS and what that looks like. And we've got some great panelists here today that hopefully can answer the question and what we should be thinking about for the SaaS in the future. So I'm going to pass over to the panel to do a quick introduction, one by one, and then we'll crack on. So over to you, Godard.
Great, thanks. So I'm Godard Abel, co-founder and CEO of G2, and we're like a TripAdvisor for SaaS products.
Maeve.
Hi, my name is Maeve Leafsey, and I'm co-founder and CEO of Cloud KPI, and we're analytics for SaaS, so we help SaaS companies use their data to really drive growth.
Josh.
My name is Josh White. I'm a partner at Notion Capital. We are a VC based in London. We just focus on investing in Series A, Series B SaaS companies across Europe. Have about 65 companies now in the portfolio, about $500 million under management.
Hi, I'm Mike Sylvie from Moogsoft. I'm one of the co-founders there, and we use AI to do incident detection and service impact prediction for large enterprises right now, and we're just moving into a cloud-native SaaS solution for SMEs as well.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for the great intros. So let's jump straight into it then, right? Shall we? So I've been reading up in preparation for this panel to find out a little bit what sort of the themes are around what the future of SaaS looks like. And some analysts are saying that spending growth on SaaS technology is likely to slow over the next 10 years, even though the overall SaaS footprint will increase dramatically as the enterprise starts to adopt more SaaS technology. Why do we think that is? And do you agree with that for a start? And really, why should, if spending growth is going to slow, why should future SaaS founders actually bother? Why should future SaaS founders even bother about starting a SaaS business if it's going to be a lot lower revenue growth over the next
even companies
few
like ourselves who've moved into SaaS and moved into CI/CD and APIs, we're buying in things that we don't need to build. So I think SaaS is only going to expand, and the whole API market is just going to expand more and more and more.
I think it also gets into what SaaS actually is.
Yep.
Because it's probably taking on a broader meaning. Now, it used to be just software hosted in the cloud, multi-tenanted, single instance, subscription pricing model. But I think now, when you're looking at transactional pricing models and usage-based pricing models, and you would have thought that the majority of the software market over time will be delivered via a SaaS delivery model. So I think there's still a huge amount of market to go after. Growth slows a little bit as the market gets bigger. But I feel as an investor, there's still huge opportunity in front of us.
Okay.
I suppose the other part of it is the growth, because the average contract values are actually going down, and that's because it's getting to be a more competitive market, and people expect value because they know what they can get, and they can look around and get different offers. But I think that's only good for the whole SaaS market. The products get better, the value they deliver gets better for the consumer.
And I think what I would say, I think maybe per app pricing might go down, but we also see businesses buying more and more apps. And I think now there's a great study by Netscope. The average enterprise now is consuming 1,300 cloud apps and services, and that's up almost 10% year over year. And I also believe in the whole Mark Andreessen software's eating the world. And I think SaaS is going to automate almost all parts of every business. And I think if you look at it at a higher level, I think businesses are going to spend more and more on technology, more and more on automation. And frankly, I think they're going to spend less on people, and software is going to do more and more of the work. So I would actually say in 30 years, probably 80% of business spend will be SaaS and technology. So I think it's just going to keep growing.
So we're already seeing, though, aren't we, that enterprises are starting to reduce their IT infrastructure budget, and it's the business side of the organization that's now buying what they want. Yes. So this is going to be buy what you want rather than build what you want. That's what's going to drive more SaaS.
Exactly.
The trajectory has to be up.
And I think the data says, like, the average CMO now, right, even the analysts are saying the CMO spends more than the CIO on technology. And I think the average marketing org is almost buying 200 apps. Average HR app
Really?
200 apps. And on G2, we have 100,000 apps in total,
Yeah.
and it's doubling year over year. And obviously, AWS, you guys help fuel it, because the infrastructure is there. So I think there's just more and more purpose-built apps for every business, every function. And so I think companies are just going to buy more and more of them.
So don't listen to that question. If you have any,
Yeah.
if you have any ideas for SaaS companies, do them because.
So so my next question is, obviously, if you're seeing these numbers and you're analysing them and thinking, I'm going to start a new business, I'm sure there are people in the audience here that, are future founders, if not founders already. What's the message, with these analyst forecasts about the revenue growing? I mean, it doesn't feel positive, but we are saying that it's still worth doing because. Yeah.
But if, for example, the reason why, what's driving, SaaS products, and a big part of that is just finding talent. And it gets more and more difficult to get the people that you need to build your business, right? So you look for solutions that can automate that, and the best way to deliver them is through SaaS.
Yeah.
So I just
And
don't
time
think
to
that's going to
market.
stop soon.
Yeah, and time to market, even without resources. I mean, the complexity of building things anyway. If you can, we use Pendo. Why do we use Pendo? We need to instrument that experience, but we use that because it's there and easy and quick.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I think SaaS used to be about just replacing on-premise software with in the cloud software.
Yeah.
But I think now, where you look at some of the other benefits of being in the cloud, like leveraging the data,
Yeah.
the whole kind of API infrastructure, the power of AI, the compute power in the cloud, driving the power of AI. And so now SaaS is not just replacing on-premise software, it's actually replacing a lot of manual workflows and processes. So that potentially opens up a whole new market. So it's no longer just a replacement thing. It's like, you look at any business and you look at workflows or processes that are being done in a manual, repetitive way or being done in some sort of inefficient way. That is an opportunity for a SaaS tool to replace it. So, I think that I feel like the market
Josh,
future market is very
the
healthy.
opportunity is multiplied by the fact that people are people are building APIs to things. So there is that, as you just said, but the fact that APIs are there as well, it's allowing this growth to happen more organically as well.
Yeah.
Interesting. So, talking about skills, and we mentioned that a minute ago, and I think, is that one of the big drivers that people can think about, helping, if you look at sort of certain opportunities within software companies today, what are the sort of big drivers around the skills that are needed within SaaS? Is it more or less, or is it, what are the opportunities that people have in developing those new technologies?
And I think everyone needs more engineers. And I think the cool thing I'm seeing here at SaaStock, I'm an entrepreneur from Hungary, and he has a bunch of great engineers in Budapest, and now SaaS in the cloud is giving him global distribution. Because traditionally engineers in Hungary, they couldn't have reached the market, and they have amazing engineers. And I think now anyone, and it's true across Europe, right? We have engineers that are from Romania, but every country now. And I think more and more companies are also going very virtual.
Yeah.
Like Zoom, Eric Wan, their founder, most of his engineers were in China. Yeah. But your engineers can now be anywhere, so I think that's how we solve the skills problem. They don't now have to move to Dublin, they don't have to move to London, San Francisco, they can be anywhere, and then with the cloud, just deploy their apps.
So there's two pieces to it. There's like the development of SaaS, the skills needed for that, but then there's the sort of end user skills needed, right? Because it feels like, we talk a lot at AWS about the skills gap, and everybody I think agrees that startups find it really hard to find talent and all that kind of stuff on the development side. What is the opportunity for using SaaS technology to help reduce that skills gap?
I mean, if
Across
you look
on the front end, like on the user side, but also the back end. When you're thinking about what kind of business to build.
If you look at the sales side of things, it's so hard to get really good salespeople, right? And we can already see that a huge amount of the work that's done around sales is being automated. So you're bringing the best leads up to the top, and you're not relying on other people doing that. And then in terms of capitalizing on the data that you're able to get your arms around, analysts are going to have far better tools to enable them to do that, and that's going to speed up the whole process of getting better products out to the consumer, because we understand very quickly what works, what doesn't work.
Yeah, if you think about you building a big solution, okay? In the old days, we would build a big solution with a huge set of engineers. They have to be in one room typically. It's very hard to manage distributed software engineers. Very hard. You've got to write specs. You've got to write, testing, yada yada yada. when you break it all down to microservices, when you modularize all this stuff and have small teams, and AWS is the poster child for this, this platformization. When you do that, you can have resources anywhere. So then you avoid the issue of the Bay Area where it's very expensive to hire people, and you're competing with you guys and Google and blah, blah, blah. You can go to the small teams, they can be anywhere, so you can find people more easily. And these guys will help fund you in those different areas, which they wouldn't do previously. They had to see they had to see that you owned all the resources in the same place. It doesn't need to be like that anymore.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about companies, the need for companies, for tech companies to be bilingual. And what we mean by that is actually an understanding of AI, but also a deep understanding of the industry that they're trying to apply it to. Because I think all too often we see one or the other. And so actually a deep understanding of the industry is probably more traditional skill, more traditional experience that people have. But if you marry that together with the power of AI, then I think that's when you've got a solution that can be really valuable and really groundbreaking, and you're actually combining kind of typically like older skills with newer skills to deliver something that really meets the needs of an industry. We see a lot of teams who have fantastic AI, machine learning talent, and they're just sort of looking for an industry to apply it to. And we found the best companies actually have that deep understanding of the industry as well, which I think you need. Like, for example, we have a company called Scoretex, and they put cameras into manufacturing facilities, so they can video products coming off the production line in a manufacturing facility, and they use their AI, they use computer vision to recognize defects in the products coming off the production line much more cheaply and more effectively than a human could do. But the team, it's a French company, the team have tremendous AI skills, but they didn't really they focus on the automotive industry, and they didn't really get the product market fit until they hired a senior exec from the automotive industry who really had the understanding of how the production lines and how the checking, how the checking worked coming off the production line. And now it seems like the thing is coming together.
Yeah, yeah.
And I suppose it's like, with AI, it's such a big, wide term, isn't it? And where it seems to really work is where it's solving a very specific problem. And I think there's a lot more of that application rather than trying to boil the ocean. You say, well, look, I've got this one thing, this set of data, this problem, and I want to apply AI to solve that. And it seems to really then be effective.
Yeah, I mean, I know we talked about this last night. Did you have something to say, Dan? No.
Well, the only other thing I would say in terms of skills, the other thing that's making it easier is platforms. I'm looking at Salesforce, they always have a platform. And so if you want to build your app on top of theirs, or now there's companies like Airtable.
Yeah.
They're kind of low code, no code. And it does make it very easier where maybe you don't even need engineers. You can just configure business workflows. And even like AI, Amazon, everyone has services you can just call. And so you can focus more on the industry knowledge, less on actually having the right code or even build your own AI. And so I do think that also opens up whole new ways different people can create apps without having to be engineers.
Interesting. So what about, because we talked about this last week when we were at offsite, and I know you one of the things that you were very excited about with things like where SaaS becomes immersive into the kind of the data interaction. You were the hotel software company that you invested in recently, where they're trying to replace the whole kind of check-in process, and it becomes like self-serve and all that kind of stuff, which is something we see quite a few budget hotel chains and things like that. Is that kind of gives the power of using the technology to the end user as opposed to having expensive people at the desk or anything like that. So if someone was starting a SaaS business now, what would they, where should they look at that kind of opportunity, where you make software immersive into the actual day-to-day operation of their everyday life?
The beauty they've got in this market today that we didn't have way back was that things exist. So, sorry about the analogy, but the music business is my analogy. So, I can't play a thing, but back in the 80s, I could buy a synthesizer and a sampler. Sorry, a synthesizer and a sequencer. I can now make music, or all of a sudden off I go. In our world now, I can have an idea for if you have an idea for a business solution, all this stuff is out there to stitch together in SaaS and build a product if you want to. On the other side, if you're a developer with an idea, you can take your idea, put out a bunch of APIs, stick it in Amazon, the Amazon marketplace, and off you go. People can consume that themselves. So the opportunities for developing software companies today are much greater than they were back in when we were building monolithic stuff in those days. So I think the opportunities are huge.
We're seeing, like you said, Jono, we're seeing quite a few of our companies whose SaaS solution is actually becoming part of the product that they're taking to market. So whereas software or SaaS used to be in the back end, it used to be about keeping a record of your information or driving productivity or whatever, we're seeing it sort of almost B2B2C. Because software is sort of eating the world, it's becoming part of what you're taking to your customers. So, we have Muse who have a SaaS platform. They sell into hotels, but it's a SaaS plus payments plus marketplace. So it includes your ability to pay online. It includes online check-in. It includes online concierge. It includes a way of opening your room with your phone. So, a hotel now doesn't just offer rooms with people stood behind the desk. There's a digital part of what they're offering to their customer, which Muse is actually helping them to deliver. So it's actually part of the product, which makes it even more valuable than just something which is all about making your people more productive at the back end. And we're seeing this across a number of different industries. We got a company, Glowfox, selling into gyms and fitness studios, Paddle, who sell into the software industry. And it's actually, that the SaaS is part of what their customers then take to market. So you really need to think about, that sort of two-stage part of the proposition.
It's the customer experience, isn't it? It's like, how do you evolve the customer experience? I mean, Amazon have been very good at that. The things that we've done over the years, increasing customer experiences, not necessarily reinventing anything new. It's just like creating a better customer experience, a better buying process, and all those kind of things. And that's something that's. I mean, do you see that kind of technology on your platform coming through quite a lot as well? What sort of trends are you seeing on that side of things, where customers' experiences are being?
Yeah, I think I definitely see companies, like obviously in the travel space, there's a company, Trip Actions, and they're and obviously they're much more than just travel software. They've even bundled in the service, but obviously you can book your travel, but they even have agents embedded, but it's really a holistic service, and then even help you if your flight gets delayed. But it's sort of this hybrid. It's almost like what was an old travel agency plus what was a SaaS app plus what was an expense app. So I think it is much more, and then they offer you a much better experience. And even if you need human help, they provide that as well. And I do think because now the technology layer is so much easier, I think SaaS companies are more innovating at that layer. And obviously users now, they have thousands of happy reviews. And so I do think that's a big trend, adding the experience to the app.
And then of course there's the whole data piece, because if you are immersing your customers into the SaaS experience, you're collecting the data, right, in order to do that machine learning and kind of drive that future customer experience.
You have to instrument
well,
everything.
Right?
You have to instrument everything.
And I suppose to understand what it is they want, right? What is it going to be an added value for them? So we've seen a ticketing company that we know that started testing out different add-ons. So when you buy your ticket, you can buy a drink, or you can buy some of the paraphernalia, or whatever, so all of that, they would test it with data and say, okay, what seems to be getting the pickup in terms of additional revenue, but also satisfies the user because it's convenient for them. But being able to get down to that through your data.
Yeah, and then you can even, what's also interesting, Trip Actions, you can then aggregate the spend across your customers, and then even get your customers better deals. Because all of a sudden, rather than being just one SMB using a piece of travel software, now all of a sudden you're buying with millions of other users, and all of a sudden you can get better deals as well. Yeah. So then you can go much further and offer your customers much more than just the software.
I mean, instrument everything is an important one, I think you mentioned there, Mike. From an investor standpoint, Joss, how much emphasis do you put on a company who thinks not just data for data's sake, but actually puts an emphasis on instrumenting the whole experience of the user as it goes through that experience?
Yeah, I think that we like a company to have a data strategy. It's amazing how many don't, actually. And to have someone running that, and to have data scientists who are really there to try and understand, the value in the data and unlock the value in the data. So I think that should be an important part of what most SaaS companies are thinking about now.
Yeah.
And we call that SaaS 3.0. So SaaS 1.0 was really just moving on-premise software into the cloud. SaaS 2 was about making it optimized for mobile devices, and I think SaaS 3.0 is SaaS plus data plus AI. Is bringing about a whole new range of sort of power and capabilities to a SaaS application. So I think, we like to see the way that a SaaS company is leveraging the data and hopefully, adding further value to its proposition, and also more, with more volume, higher and higher volumes of data, maybe more and more defensibility in terms of what they're bringing to market.
It comes in two ways, doesn't it? I mean, the first bit is if you instrument enough of the experience, then when you're doing the sale, and Matthew Scullion is up there from Matillion, he'll tell you he increased his conversions of proof of concepts to sales by 60% through this instrumentation and tracking what people are doing through the software. Once you've got the customer, then it's retaining them with what you guys offer. To instrument enough to be able to see what they're doing, so you can retain those customers.
And you can see in the analytics space that it's gone beyond saying what's happened. It's about why it happened, because the why gives you the opportunity, right? And that people are not just satisfied with the what. I mean, the obsession we all have with SaaS metrics is really just telling us what, isn't it? But it's not really telling us why. And I think there's a whole big layer that's coming into, okay, I know what, but I need to really understand why, because then I can go back, maybe I can replicate it. And we can see, certainly from the SaaS companies that we're talking about, that when we first spoke to them, they just wanted to know what, and now the demand is, well, it's not enough. And I think that's true. It's not enough.
Yep.
Interesting. Okay. So we can't have a chat about data without talking about the privacy concerns that customers may or may not have. To what extent are we thinking about that as a potential blocker for future SaaS companies in product development and things like that? How do SaaS companies or future SaaS technologies take provision for customer need around privacy, whether the customers want it or not? Who wants to start with that one?
I love this subject. It's my favourite subject.
I'll just say, I think you have to be cognizant of it, and that's my only experience.
I mean,
Carry on.
we all give away data, right? We give away data to get something back.
Yeah.
Right, that's basic. I think that in the future it's going to be much more about our choice how data is used, because there's so many brilliant benefits by us, in fact, sharing data. So if people kind of opt in or a data co-op, they can get much richer services back, they can get much richer insights for themselves. But I think that the problem has been how badly that's been communicated, in the sense that we don't know what the data is being used for, and almost a desire to hide what the data is being used for. Whereas if you say we'll all opt in, let's take something really simple. Everybody hates not understanding SaaS benchmarks. And we're kind of trying to scrabble with different pieces of research, pocket them together and understand what the benchmark is. Whereas if we told all SaaS companies in the room, if you opt in to share your data with us, and we make sure we secure that data and only use it for these purposes, will you share it? And I'd say the answer is probably yes, because you get the benchmarks.
And I certainly agree with that. People will trade data for value, but I also think now as a startup, you have to invest in compliance much earlier. Yeah. And actually, I visited our partner LinkedIn here today in Dublin, and we use some of their data via API, but their recommendation to me was also, hey, we should put our European headquarters in Dublin, because I think the EU Data Privacy Commissioner here, obviously they're very active and they work with a lot of technology companies, and obviously GDPR now is a big issue. We're starting to get more and more complaints. But I think we are actually going to now hire a data compliance person of a legal background here in Dublin, because then they can handle all the EU interaction. But I do think you have to do it earlier. We already have one council, we're going to add a second. And their recommendation on LinkedIn was the first person you should hire in Dublin is actually a legal person to manage data and compliance, and do that first. Because obviously if you don't, and we're their partner, and obviously they're probably extra careful because of that. But I think if you want to build a data business now, you actually have to build in compliance and data from day one. Whereas an entrepreneur used to be oh, I'll worry about that in a few years, because frankly, nobody can sue me for anything anyway. And I do think now, especially in the EU, it's changed. You almost have to start with your compliance and your data architecture, and then build the rest.
Yeah, I think it's more of an issue for consumer tech companies than it is for B2B SaaS companies. I think that the companies in our portfolio, we certainly want them to be mindful of it and just ensure that they have a strategy on privacy, and they have a position. And I think to err on the side of over communication and transparency is a good idea. But I don't know. It's not something that worries us to any sort of great degree. I mean, I do think that there is, particularly in communication. I mean, we talked about this a little bit. Real-time communication, and generally we've moved back to the kind of walled garden approach. Whether you look at Slack or WhatsApp, suddenly there's a walled garden within which you communicate, and you're trusting this company with your data. You don't know exactly how they use your data or how they're going to leverage it and make money out of it. So I think that is going to drive some decentralization, particularly in real-time messaging communications for companies that actually still want to control their data, want to ensure that it's secure and it's encrypted. And so I think that's an interesting opportunity. And I think there will be, decentralization is certainly a sort of trend that we're starting to see in response to privacy. But I don't know whether it's a really sort of significant trend at this stage, but it's something that we're sort of interested in.
Josh, in our case it is. So we only sell to enterprises, and we've got a lot of global customers. And for us, this move into a total cloud SaaS service, cloud-native SaaS service, is we've had to hire people, particularly like you say on the legal side, to make sure that in the EU, India, California's new laws, that we're really careful with that. So, it is a big deal. So your companies, I don't want to contradict you, but they should probably look at it very seriously.
And there is actually the good news on G2 now. There are some new vendors popping up. We see there's this company called DataGrail, and they really do. They kind of try to do GDPR compliance in a box. And because obviously one of the requirements of GDPR is that when a customer submits a delete request, you actually have to share all your data with them and delete everything. And it actually gets really hard even for a startup, right? All of a sudden you have 6 or 7 sales and marketing apps. And the record's not just in Salesforce, it's not just in your app, it's now in 6 or 7 different marketing apps. And A, how do you actually extract it to send it to the user? And then B, how do you actually make sure you've deleted it across all your apps? And I do think SaaS is actually solving that. Like I said, DataGrail is a cool one. Yeah. But it actually manages that they have APIs to all the other apps you buy, and then they can actually suck the customer's record out and delete it across systems. And so I think SaaS is helping. But I would say to entrepreneurs, I do think you have to think about it much earlier than you used to. And I would actually think about it before you launch your product. Because a lot of these like security, data architecture, privacy, if you build it in from day one, it's pretty easy. But if you screw it up, to fix it later gets super hard.
Super hard. But as Josh says, don't let that get in the way of starting your company.
Yeah, I mean, for us, it's not that we don't care about it, but for us, it's sort of table stakes. We want to take it for granted as maybe too casual, but for us, I think a good team will be thinking about this. We'll certainly do our due diligence and check that they're thinking about it, but it wouldn't necessarily. Once we've kind of checked that box, it's not something that would influence an investment decision. We're more interested in the product and the opportunity. Yeah. That is just something that is an important factor in the background, I guess.
Yeah. Although one more point on that, I was on a panel with John Samorjai, the head of corporate development for Salesforce, and one thing he said, it's actually blocking a number of their M&A deals now. And he's Salesforce Ventures. I think one of the things they're contemplating, and maybe even for a VC, I would recommend you add to your due diligence, is actually having like a privacy data expert. Kind of maybe you already do it as part of your diligence, because most VCs, frankly, don't do that, at least in California. They just kind of wire us the money, which is nice. But I think if I were a VC, I would actually do it. And even if you still do the deal, at least if you do the third-party audit early, and then, because later it may block other deals, and then it's too late. And so I do think it's just much more critical, and as an entrepreneur, I don't like it. I hate compliance. It's like your least favorite thing, right? It's like going to the dentist and getting 4 cavities.
It does actually halt innovation in many ways, right? So, but
your customers want it, investors want it, and if you ever want to sell your company, you better be ready.
Yeah.
But I think a SaaS product is going to solve a SaaS problem, right? I mean, there are, as you say, there are products out there right now trying to deal with that help.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned decentralization, and we had a question on that because there is obviously a big movement on that. We've got investors investing in technology that do that kind of stuff. When we're telling people to go and build SaaS companies where everything sits on the cloud, and then there's this movement that says, well, actually, you need to kind of everything as you mentioned earlier, a fat client, which is an old school terminology, But how should future SaaS founders be thinking about that as a potential architectural consideration? Should they be building that in from day one, or not bothering?
First, find some customers, then decentralize.
And then figure it out.
Yeah. I mean, I think that there's a few strands to it. I mean, obviously, crypto and blockchain is one sort of form of decentralization. The internet was built around open standards and a network that nobody owned, and suddenly, with the cloud and with messaging services like WhatsApp, or the power is becoming more and more centralized. And there's a certain percentage of users and organizations and everything else that don't necessarily like that. But there's also AI. The AI demands a whole load of compute power, as you guys know better than anyone. And so some of that compute power now is being needed on the edge or at a local level in self-driving cars or Industry 4.0, so that's driving some level of decentralization as well. So there are a few different themes to it. So all I would say is I think that if you look at those different themes and they're all kind of driving this move towards decentralization, I just think it's an opportunity, right? If you're thinking about setting up a business, I think that, I can't necessarily articulate exactly what they are, but there's some changes coming about, and I think that that's throwing up opportunity. That's the way we look at it at Notion.
I suppose it's what's driving the decentralization is going to be key. What is it for? Is it the security issues?
Is it privacy? Is it keeping the data local, that kind of thing?
And people do resist centralization as well because they want the freedom to be able to do what they want to do in a certain way. And I think that kind of goes in waves.
And I would also say APIs really help in this, because when I first started building software 20 years ago, you'd have to replicate everything in your database. And then the beauty of APIs, right, you can just call one little piece of data and don't store it. And I do think now, and that's almost like you don't have to decentralize your own apps, but just don't permanently pull any data into your data store, just call it all on demand. Yeah. I think you build more and more apps that way, and then the beauty of it, you as the app developer almost don't have to hold any of the data, right? Leave it all in Salesforce or some other master data store, and don't hold any of it, and then the customer doesn't have the risk in working with you because you're not storing their data.
Yeah. Okay. So we're fastly running out of time, I see. So the last question, this is going to be to each one of you one-on-one. For the people in the audience, what are the sort of top 3 things that you think that future SaaS founders should be thinking about, or even if they are SaaS businesses today? What are the 3 things that you are thinking about for the future of SaaS today?
Everything you do, look at Amazon, right?
Obviously you first.
Sorry, mate.
I don't want to go first.
I waited for you. Everything that they do is API. Look at them, model on them, platform. Simple as that.
Platform's a good one, yeah.
I think, there's so many ways you could come at this question, but one way that I think about a lot is, computers and AI starting to take over or starting to develop capabilities, develop kind of human capabilities. I think we're way away from artificial general intelligence, decades away, but particularly in the senses. So if you're looking at vision and hearing and speaking, so the main ways that we communicate and interact with the world, I think that those interfaces are going to become more important part of a SaaS-based proposition. Computers are learning to see. Computers are learning to be better radiologists than the radiologists. Computers are detecting products coming off the manufacturing plant better than a human can. This is just going to get bigger and bigger. And then, with Amazon Echo and other, platforms in terms of the speech recognition, question and answer, being able to listen, being able to respond, being able to leverage a whole knowledge base. I think that in the way that AI can leverage that computer vision, computer speech, computer listening to augment or replace human tasks and make us work more efficiently, I think is, for me, is a really interesting one.
Thank you, Josh.
And I suppose it's I think to the point that we mentioned earlier on that, originally software as a service was to replace software, right? but now it's kind of in every part of our lives. And it's to almost think about, okay, what am I doing now? And can software, can it solve the problem? Because as you say, it's everywhere. It's everything. It's every kind of interface and interaction. And I think the other one we're seeing is that the companies that use data are the companies that are winning in SaaS. And I think that's really got to be how you think about how you set up the business from the very beginning. It isn't that I'll worry about that later. From the very beginning saying, right, we're going to use our data. We're going to make sure the data is in a way that we can actually capitalize on it and not have to go backwards and try and do that later on. So gather, use, and deliver insights. And of course, APIs. I think we're going to see more and more where we're building a series of APIs around our own API to add value to it, and that we don't try and close ourselves off from that opportunity.
Yeah. I certainly agree, data, APIs, computer vision. But one other one I would say as a founder now, I think your biggest challenge is breaking through the noise. How do you distribute your products, right? Because there are more and more developers than ever. On G2, there's 100,000 products. And probably in a year, there'll be 200,000 products, right? And at SaaStock, there's 2,000 more apps being built. So as an entrepreneur, even if you build a great app, how do you get anyone in the world to see it? And I do think there's new opportunities for distribution now.
Yeah.
And one, self-serving, but list your product on G2, and then have your customer advocates share, because I do think kind of bottoms up, like spreading the word through customers, there's nothing like it. And I would also say now, in addition to G2, there's marketplaces like AWS Marketplace, Salesforce App Exchange. But I also think rather than just trying to distribute through your own website, through your own sales and marketing, it's so hard to break through the noise. So I think if you can tap into ecosystems, AWS, Salesforce, G2, et cetera, you have a much better chance of success.
Great stuff. Well, I think that's perfect timing, I think. I think that's all we've got time for. Thank you very much to Goddard, Maeve, and Joss, and Mike for joining us at the panel. It's been super interesting. Hope everyone enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.